So I'm going to skip the first slide, okay, just for you. So today I want to talk about Shopfloor. Guess what? What's new? What's next? Let's skip that, okay? So the agenda, super simple again. What is it? In brief, a quick look at the technology behind, at the core, and once again about the pluggability. I love pluggability. Then we will see what's new in there and the roadmap. So, what is it? It's a web application, originally born from the Shopfloor WMS, that probably most of you know. It's a PWA application, so you can install it in your mobile phone. It's based on REST API, and the front end is based on Vue.js. At the moment, everything is in the WMS repository because, again, it started with a Shopfloor WMS version, but I'd like to move it soon to a better place because, as we will see, the core is not tied anymore to the warehouse management. So the technology backend side is, as I mentioned, REST API with specific services. It's based on base REST, probably not for that long, like Laurent. We're gonna probably trash base REST, don't say it to anybody, but it's based on base REST for now. So we have specific services that deal with loading the user configuration, login if you're using user authentication, loading the scenarios for the warehouse management, etc. So each of these backends, well, each of these services is responsible for validating requests, for validating the response as well. And you can also have automatic endpoints. This is one of the new pieces. And automatic open API docs. It means that based on the configuration of your application, the services are documented using a Swagger interface automatically. At the front end, we have Vue.js, as I mentioned. So it's basically a single-page application. You just load it once, and that's it. Of course, it leverages a lot of the reactivity so that when you store something on the front-end side, the UI is refreshed automatically. It's kind of fast compared to other applications. And it has, since it's based on Vue.js, you have a large ecosystem of plugins that you could use. One could be, for instance, having a new theming system. You can plug your theming system. By default, it's using Vuetify.js. So the core. As I mentioned at the beginning, it was just Shopfloor because it was a WMS application. Later on, it has been split in Shopfloor Base for the backend and Shopfloor Mobile Base for the front. So in Shopfloor Base, you find the models to configure an application. There is a model which is Shopfloor App, and you can basically create as many applications as you like. They are automatically registered. The routes are automatically registered, which means that potentially you could have an app for WMS and at the same time an app for the shop and an app for field service, if you like it. And the mobile part, so the mobile is actually the front-end part, is decoupled. By default, they work together, of course. And in there, you find the basic setup for the application and all the utils and registry that allows you to plug your own customizations and your services and your screens. As I mentioned, base REST is at the core of the REST services, and there is a new module there, which is Endpoint Route Handler, which is the one that allows you to register automatically any kind of route in Odoo live. So today, well, if you don't use this, you always have to declare a controller and restart it. With this module, you can register new routes on the fly, and this is very handy because this is why we can have multiple applications that you can create from the front, from the UI of Odoo. Because each application will have its own set of services. And they're going to be tied only to that application because the application ID is strongly tied to all the routes that you're going to register. So it's very pluggable, both on the backend and the front. So in the backend, you have generic components to retrieve user information for searching records. For instance, for the WMS, we have a lot of scanning, and there is a base machinery that allows you to define your own finders for records, like for any kind of Odoo records. And in the front, you have registries everywhere, basically. It's, in this fashion, it's similar to Odoo, where you have the registry for the fields, a registry for the widgets, etc. So you have a registry for processes that are basically scenarios or, let's say, workflows that you want to implement in your application. Registry for pages, so that if you want to create a new page that appears in a main menu, you can do it from there. Or you can let the backend create menu items from you if you want. There is also a standalone translation system, so we don't use at all the translation from Odoo. So if you ask yourself why something is not translated, it's not translated. You have to provide a translation through a JSON file. You have automatic routing, so that when you register a process, imagine you register a new scenario for the shipping in the WMS application, the routing is automatically registered, so you don't have to do anything else. And we now have also an authentication registry, so you can now plug your own authentication. So at the moment, there are two modules to support user authentication and API key authentication. So for each app, you can decide if it's going to be used API key or standard user authentication. For the ones familiar with WMS, it looks like this. In the first screen, you see that it also displays the environment you're in, so that you don't mess up with production without knowing it. In this case, you have a login through API key. One feature that we'd like to introduce is that, I mean, an API key can be a very long string with random chars, so you probably don't remember it. In our case, since they work mostly in the warehouse and they have a special device, they don't use their own phone, they use a special device, so normally the device is already configured and they don't have to change this that much. A good improvement would be to plug it to the scan feature, so that you can scan a barcode for your API key, depending on maybe on the position where you are in the warehouse, and then you log in automatically. Then you see the settings page, which as well is pluggable. So for instance, you have language and profile. Those are basically coming by default. You can, of course, decide to have more languages if you like, and the languages are configured from the backend. So you create an app, you select the languages that you want to use, you select also the default language that you want to use, and automatically the app is going to set the default language and provide you a way to switch on the available languages. Then the profile, which is somehow strictly related to the warehouse, so probably I will split this out. But in short, it allows you to describe the behavior of the screens and of the backend services by selecting a specific profile. So for instance, if you are in a certain zone of the warehouse and you are the picker, you select the picker profile, and in this way you're going to see only menu items that have to deal with picking. and only scenarios like cluster picking or discrete picking that are going to drive you through the warehouse, but only for picking. Or if you are at the delivery, you select the profile delivery, and then you see all the scenarios for handling deliveries. And this is also tied to the configuration that you can do in the backend. So when you configure menu items in the backend, you can say this profile can see this profile can use that. As well as the operation types. You can limit operation types by profile. The last one is workstation, still related to the warehouse. So imagine that you're in a certain area of the warehouse and you have a special workstation where you have a different printer. So you can scan this workstation, you switch, and then you print from this station. And that button there is plugged from another module. So you can register your own settings page, and they will be automatically shown here. On the third screen, you see how you can select a profile, and the profiles are configured in the backend as well. So once you log in, you are forced to select a profile, so you're redirected to this screen, and then you can select it. And once you do that, the menu items that you can use are loaded. In this case, this is not the menu, it's the home screen also has some sort of menus. Otherwise, you tap on the hamburger icon. And then you see this, which is the main menu. And as you see, those numbers are, in the case of course, of the WMS, are the number of operations that you have to process. For that particular, for all the operation types that you see there. But also, it looks like this. So this is a completely different application. It's a shop. It reuses Shop Invader under the curtains. So what I've done is that I plugged the core of Shopfloor with Shop Invader. Shop Invader gives me already all the REST services for dealing with the shop. Shopfloor app gives me all I need to build an application, and then you just need a theme and a few more widgets. Like in this case, this is the add to cart widget. Of course, it's custom. The customer wanted it in this way, so we create it like that. So what we've done is that we just configured a new Shopfloor application, applied a new theme, and then added all the missing bits that we had. Like there is an automatic synchronization of the catalog because this customer works mostly offline. So there is a synchronization mechanism that detects if the catalog has changed or if a new version has been deployed for the app, for Shopfloor. Then when this happens, the customer is notified and the app automatically refreshes and loads the latest version of the app. So on top of this, we have one problem of the most important modules that are related to the REST framework is RESTlog and its companion Shopfloor RESTlog. This is very handy because it allows you to track any request that happens to Odoo. Okay, so if you don't know why something went wrong with the customer yelling at you, yeah, but I scanned this thing in the warehouse and it doesn't work, you go in Odoo backend and you have the list of all the calls classified by state, so it's failed or not, and also classified by severity. So for instance, if you get a user error exception, that's not really critical, right? It means that the user did something wrong. And from there, you can see also the message, which in any case is going to be displayed to the user on the app. But from there, you're also able to filter and group and find only the critical errors, and then you can prevent the customer to complain, because if you check these logs frequently, you're going to spot the issues before they do. And so there you get also the full traceback. You get the full request data, including the headers, but excluding sensitive data, like could be an API key or a password. And then, as I said, you have the automatic classification of the failures. And last but not least, it's configurable by service and endpoint, which means that, for instance, let's take, the application for the shop. I want to track only when I submit the cart, for instance. But I don't want to track when I load the catalog, because as I'm loading the full catalog, it contains a huge payload. So unless I customize the way it stores the response, it's going to be too heavy. In any case, I'm not interested in storing the load of the catalog. But I'm interested to check logins. I'm interested to check submit of the cart when it happens. And so there is a way to configure through a system config parameter the collection, in this case, Shopfloor app. The usage of the service, if you're familiar with the component, is basically what identifies the components. And also the endpoint. So if you're doing, I don't know, in my case is cart submit, or instead of, in this case, for instance, you have the cart and you have cart submit or cart get, and I want to log only cart submit. I can configure cart submit, and cart get won't get tracked. So for the WMS, a quick summary of what we had already last year. So we had a single pack transfer, zone picking, cluster picking, checkout, delivery, and location content transfer. They're quite complete. They are basically able to cover almost all the needs in a warehouse, but a few that we'll see later. And they are configurable as well. So for each scenario, you normally configure a bunch of menu items. And on these menu items, you can also control what they can do. So for instance, if you want to allow a specific scenario for that particular menu item, which may be assigned to a particular profile, you want to allow them to create moves, you can configure that. And you can have also other kind of configurations. So what's new? Of course, a lot of fixes and improvements in the core. The ones flagged in with a green check mark are the ones that I placed in the roadmap last year. So I did it. So the authentication is decoupled. The app is now configurable from the backend. The work in progress are on the automatic sync that I mentioned before. So for now, it's not there in the core yet, but I'd like to make it somehow generic and allow everyone to have its own synchronization, especially for the version. It's very handy to automatically refresh the application on the user devices when you have a new version deployed. And then the plugin module for Shop Invader, which is still a work in progress. On the WMS side, a lot of fixes. We improved the quantity picker widget. In case you don't know, it's a kind of an advanced quantity selection. So you have, especially if you use packagings, you have the quantity is automatically divided in packaging. So you can play with the packaging quantity, and you're gonna get the automatic, the computation of the real quantity that you're gonna pick. Or you can also do the other way around. There is an improvement also on the scan widget. Thanks, Jacques-Etienne. Dangerous goods integration, in case you have to deal with dangerous goods. There is a new scenario, delivery shipment, which is based on shipment advice and allows you to organize your shipments. So you can, before you have the real delivery, you can organize the way the delivery is done when the truck gets there. Then, work in progress, the reception screen, so that we can stop using the Odoo one. And inventory, which is Benoit is, there, from Accretion, he's working on the inventory. So, roadmap. Maybe some of you read my request on the contributors mailing list, so I'd like to split again part of the core and move it to something that is not related to Shopfloor, and put it somewhere at a PWA something. I'm open for suggestions. There is a problem, at least until version 15, whereas, remember the magic I said, you can create the application, register the routes, blah, blah, blah. It works, kind of. There is a problem with cross-worker, and sometimes they're not, the change is not propagated. This is actually a problem with Odoo core, whereas the routing map, which is responsible for collecting all the routes of any controller that you might register, is tied to the environment. So you can imagine that you have multiple workers and tons of instances. That doesn't scale up that much. So I already have a work in progress fix, so I'm gonna work on that. Then we started adding UI test coverage with Cypress. At the moment, it's not running in the OCA CI, so you have to run it manually if you like. This is because it's just an exception. It's the only repository where we have this, so we should probably discuss on how to make this available across any repository that have to test JS. I just learned from Laurent that in the future, we're going to have a marvelous refactoring on the backend side for the REST API based on Fast API. So yeah, in the future for version 16, we're going to probably rework on that. And then define a roadmap, because I define the roadmap only when I do a talk. So it's not really a roadmap, and that's my bad, actually. Because this way, it's harder to involve others in a unified way and a shared way. So references, there you can find all the modules I talked about. Thanks for listening. Questions? Daniel.
I imagine, I suppose you don't have an offline mode. How hard would it be to have that?
We have, but it's a particular case. So for the shop that you've seen, we don't care about communicating with Odoo all the time. So for instance, in this case, the customer doesn't care if the price that is in the order is the same that they're going to get in the invoice, for instance. So when you place something in the cart, you're not sending anything. So you send the full cart only once it's done. And we are in the making of a way also to handle possible issues with this, because imagine a packaging changed on a product, and you have this product already in the cart, right? So you have to validate this before it's sent. So for this customer, we are basically offline. What I like to do is that Axon and Accretion, they're working on a new interface for Shop Invader, and in there they are using a different approach, which is they send all the times when possible, and they are collecting the transaction, so they send all the transaction at once as soon as they can communicate with Odoo. It's a different kind of approach, so probably I'm going to do a mix of them, but it's definitely feasible. It really depends on the use case, and it's somehow a contract between the use case and what you can do on in the code, but it's definitely feasible. Tu hai alzato la mano prima.
Yeah.
Please.
I don't know if the link you put is regarding the slides, so we have a documentation of all the specifications.
Yes.
In the form of the slides.
Yep.
I've updated them recently, so
yeah,
a description of all the scenarios, all the options you can configure, and
yeah, it's this one. This one, yeah. So all the scenarios that we developed for the WMS are described in this documentation. There is a Google Doc there with all the screens and all the behaviors described.
and in the roadmap we plan to add also integration with RMA,
Mm-hmm.
which is something existing on OCA.
Any more questions? No? Cool. Thank you.